And I'm here to tell you that really doesn't matter how good you are at selling your course if you can't teach it. If you search for resources online for how to create online courses, you're probably going to find a ton of stuff on how to make and sell them. Lots of money signs and figures and things like that. However, you're not going to find a whole lot on how to create them effectively and teach them effectively. If you can't teach your course, then you're not going to deliver what you promised to your students when they forked money out to you. Those students are never going to become return customers, and ultimately, while you might earn a few bucks, your course and business is not going to succeed. In this video, I'm going to show you 4 ways that you can improve the impact of your online courses. My name is Dustin Bakkie, and welcome to the High Impact Teaching Lab. First suggestion I have for you comes actually straight from the Universal Design for Learning guidelines, in that the first area of that theory is that we need to provide a way for students to engage with our content. That's one of the most important things you can do. So this is the why behind they are learning what they're learning and why they bought your course. What is the outcome, right? This probably leads back to your course promise. So what was the promise that you have for your students? And how do they connect with it? I like to call this the plot. You probably want to have a nice, clear plot for your digital courses. Now, what is the plot? This actually stands for Primary Learning Objectives and Transformation. This is the plot points. A good digital course is going to have 3 to 5 of these clear, high, big level objectives. And what you want to be doing is making sure every piece of your content ties back into the plot, right? It's all part of the plot. And so you need to make sure nothing is irrelevant. Everything has a connection to why they're learning what they're learning. This is going to keep students going and help them create a frame of reference for what they're learning and why they're learning it. The next piece of creating high impact online courses is to design accessibly. And what this means is the idea and the term of accessibility tends to get a bad rap. We actually like the term universal design for learning or inclusive design. And what this means is that things you do are going to support your learners regardless of who they are. In fact, in the comments, I want you to let me know how you learn best. For me, I love auditory learning and then hands-on application. Now, that doesn't mean that I have a documented learning disability or perhaps need specific accommodations. However, your content will hit better for all of your students when you design for those margins. So what this might look like is making sure that when you're creating PDFs in Google Docs, that you create a screen reader accessible one that has a nice clear title and then headings and then normal text, everything formatted really well so that if a student is using a screen reader, they can do that. And then take that content and polish it up for your beautiful PDF that other people might want to look at. So it's an easy way of creating 2 pieces of content, one that's highly accessible and one that's very visually appealing. Another thing you can do is use a service like Descript.com for all of your video and audio needs. And what this does is it actually provides an automatic transcription. And it's pretty darn good. And it lets you edit that transcription like it's a text document. So what you do is you just take your video file, upload it to Descript.com, and then polish up the text file and export. And you could export the audio. And just doing that with this one tool now takes all of your videos, creates an audio version and a text version. And this allows your learners to learn in whatever way that works best for them. For example, I'm recently going through an online digital course, and all of their video lessons, they also have audio transcripts. And so what I do is I load it up into my podcast player and listen to it while I'm at the gym to help intake the information. Then I come home and I apply it with the video side by side. Again, a different way to approach content in a way that is a bit more accessible to everyone. If you're finding this to be helpful, I want to take a moment to humbly ask that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, consider hitting that bell notification so that you stay up to date with all of this, and maybe even share it out to someone who you think could benefit from it. Okay, the third tip for creating high impact online courses is that we really want to foster connection. Now, what does it mean to foster connection? Well, there's actually 3 different types of connection that is really important. So consider these like 3 sub-bullet points for this point. Bonus, right? So the first type of connection is you want your students to be able to connect with you, the instructor. We all learn better when we connect with our instructors. And so bring a little bit of your personality out into your content. Do live streams, do live Q&As, and just be yourself. Don't be so upright and rigid. I encourage you to actually get in front of the camera and just be yourself and be human, and that will allow your students to connect with you. The second type of connection that's really important is peer-to-peer connection. There's so much power in being in a group of people who are going through the same thing as you, who are experiencing similar struggles and successes and can lift each other up. And so a really important aspect of a successful online course is some sort of peer-to-peer engagement. And that could be an online community, that could be some sort of activity you foster where people review each other's work or provide tips on that or any sort of thing like that. So what you can do is foster some peer-to-peer connection amongst your students. And again, this will help them to get through your course. And finally, the third piece actually comes from that universal design for learning concept that I mentioned earlier, in that you want your students to connect with the content. And so when you connect with the content, there's a few different ways to do this. This means that 1, the content is relevant to them, which we've already talked a little bit about that in the first point. But secondly, a way that you help people connect with content is representation. Representation is so meaningful. And what I mean by representation is your students are seeing people that look like them, people they connect with in the content, stories that they connect with in the content. So if you're telling a story, it's probably going to resonate with a number of them. If you have diverse pictures of people in your content, they're probably going to find someone that they identify at least one part of themselves with that person. And that drives a more inclusive group experience and course experience and drives connection to your content in a way that's going to keep them learning. Okay, the fourth and final tip I have for you here is design for action. What do I mean by design for action? Learning happens in 2 different phases. There's this intake phase where we take in a bunch of information, and that leads to memorization and familiarization. But to really get a concept to stick and hold and stay up here, you have to take that information and pull it out of your head and do something with it. And so it is really important that you don't just talk at your students, that you don't just teach them, but actually have them do something with your content. Taking action could look like a workbook that they work through, getting their own ideas out. It could be guided activities. It could be a weekly challenge. It could be all sorts of different things. So just think, how can they take action on what you're teaching them? And not just at the very end, but as you go along. Thank you so much for sticking through this. I want to give you a few resources here. If you go over to thehitlab.co, right below in the description, I actually have a quick quiz that will take you about 2 minutes to do, so you can figure out exactly where your digital courses stand in terms of their effectiveness, their accessibility, and their inclusivity. So I encourage you, click that link in the description below, find out where you stand, and again, subscribe to the channel. That really goes a long way. I have a couple of other videos up here on the screen for you that I think you're gonna like. We will see you next time.